would it be like if people told the truth all the time? Like when you call some large company, credit card, BG&E, an airline, and when you get that automated system, instead of hearing due to unusually high call volumes, you hear something like this: due to the downsizing of our staff and increased reliance on automation, we're sorry your question didn't fit one of our pre-assigned categories on our phone system. If you would like to wait for Tina to return from lunch, she would be happy to take your call in approximately 27 minutes. So this week, we read Parashat Devarim, and it began in the first part of the triennial cycle, the very beginning. Eila hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moses spoke to the entire community of Israel. Words and their uses are central to Jewish tradition. We say Baruch she'amar vaya olam in the morning liturgy. Blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. The rabbis caution that while words can create, they can also destroy. And honesty is celebrated. We're meant to use our words with care. Today, I want to talk about truth-telling and about lying. And I want to consider whether it's sometimes okay to lie. Are there times when lying does less harm than the truth? Think about it for a second. Most people lie, and many of us lie more than we'd like to admit. One study from the Journal of Basic and Applied Social Psychology found that 60% of people lied at least once during a 10-minute conversation and told an average of 2 to 3 lies. Of course, you have to wonder about the accuracy of the survey anyway, because were people honest, could be worse. And we know about innocuous lies. I'm less concerned about those at the moment. I want to focus on lies that do harm to ourselves and others, and also lies that might help or even heal. Now, in general, lying is strongly discouraged. In Exodus 23, verse 7, we read, Midvar sheker tircha, keep far from lies. There's even a midrash that says the very shape of the letters in the words of truth and lie betrays their value and danger. If we compare the letters of emet, truth, and sheker, falsehood, we find that where the letters meet the line, each of the letters in emet stands on 2 legs, while the letters of sheker stand on only 1. The same midrash also points out that the letters of emet, truth, are spread out from the beginning to the end of the aleph bet. Aleph, the beginning, taf, the very end, and mem, somewhere in the middle. But the letters of sheker, lie, are grouped closely together, shin, kuf, resh. Truth stands on a solid foundation is the lesson, and falsehood can topple over quite easily. So it's clear that honesty is a virtue. When then might it be virtuous to lie? The classic text on this matter comes from the Bavli, comes from the Babylonian Talmud, Ketzad meraktim lifnei kala. The sages asked, how does one dance before the bride, which is code word for what bearing does the truth have when speaking with or about a bride on her wedding day? Beit Shammai say one recites praise of the bride as she is, kamot shehi, which could be interpreted either you emphasize her positive qualities and ignore the others, or you tell her the unvarnished truth. The text goes on to say, Beit Hillel say, one recites a fair and attractive bride. Tell her she's beautiful, or tell her partner that she's beautiful, whether you think so or not. Beit Shammai says to Beit Hillel, in a case where the bride was lame or blind, does one say with regard to her, a fair and attractive bride? But the Torah states, as we said earlier, keep far from lies. Now let's leave aside for a moment the offensive assumption that all parties would agree that someone who's blind or disabled is some way definitionally ugly. Still, Beit Hillel said to Beit Shammai, according to your statement with regard to one who acquired an inferior acquisition from the market, right? Your friend goes to an art fair and brings home a piece of art that she loves and you think is gaudy. Should you praise it or should you condemn it? Hillel says you praise it. You make your friend feel good. From here, the sages said a person's disposition should always be empathetic with other human beings. In other words, there is a reason that this person married this other person. They love each other. Presumably, they find each other attractive. Who are you to tell your truth in that moment and ruin someone's wedding? And this, I think, is the important distinction. When it's about your truth, your opinion, it's perfectly fine, oftentimes preferable, that we not only keep our mouths shut, but that we help others to feel good about their choices. Now, that doesn't mean that we tell, God forbid, an abused spouse that her husband's behavior is okay. It does mean we celebrate the healthy choices of our friends, of our family, of our community. One more text along these lines. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, with regard to 3 matters alone, it's normal for sages to amend their statements, that is, to lie. With regard to a tractate, so if he's asked whether he studied a particular masechet, a particular tractate, he may humbly say that he did not, even if he did. With regard to a bed, if he's asked whether he slept in a particular bed, he may say that he did not, to avoid shame in case some unseemly residue is found on the bed. And with regard to a host, an ushpiza, as one may say that he was not well received by a certain host, to prevent everyone from taking advantage of that person's hospitality. If we know, says the Gemara, about him that he alters his statements only with regard to these 3 matters, we still consider this person trustworthy. So when can one lie? To avoid coming off as arrogant, to avoid embarrassment, and to protect another person's worthy interests. These lies are about compassion. They're about menschlichkeit, what our tradition calls derech eretz. What concerns me is that there's far too much lying that has to do not with these kinds of things, but with history. Today, as I said, is Shabbat Hazon, the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. There are people in this world, lots of them actually, who deny that the temple ever existed in Jerusalem. There are people, of course, who deny the Holocaust. I was pleased to hear President Biden use the words Armenian genocide, but that's new for an American president. Contrast this with Poland's refusal to concede Polish complicity in the Shoah, or, for example, the many, many decades over the past 100 years in which the Tulsa race massacre was called a race riot to make it more palatable. Or this overreaction about critical race theory as a means of avoiding accountability for America's past and present. You may have heard that the Church of England is apologizing for the expulsion of Jews 721 years ago. Now, this is a little strange since the Church of England didn't exist in the 13th century, but look, we'll take it, right? Because this truth-telling, this recounting of honest English history is important. The expulsion of Jews didn't happen out of the blue. The Oxford Synod in 1222, a gathering of leading bishops and church leaders, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, began a series of anti-Semitic policies whose impact is still being felt today, and not just in England, but around the world. What did the Synod do? It forbade Jews from building synagogues where they had not settled before. It introduced badges so that Jews could be differentiated. Sound familiar? And it forbade sexual and many social relations between Jews and non-Jews. The Jews of England were not allowed to remain in the country unless they could support themselves. Also sound familiar if you saw the front page of the paper and a judge who just overturned DACA. Now, these dictates also did not come from nowhere. In 1144, an English boy, William of Norwich, was found brutally murdered with strange wounds to his head, to his arms, and torso. His uncle, a priest, blamed local Jews, and a rumor spread that Jews crucified a Christian child every year at Passover. This was the world's first blood libel. And one can draw a straight line from this savage accusation to the spurious claims made every day by the modern QAnon cult. The upshot is that within decades of the Oxford Synod, there was sufficient support among the English people to simply evict the Jews. On what day did that happen? July 18th, 1290, on the Jewish calendar, the 9th of Av, 5050, Tisha B'Av. And when were Jews welcomed back? Almost 400 years later, by Oliver Cromwell. What is the impact of this lie, the big lie, the blood libel, and the other ways our people have been cast as the villain of the Christian narrative? Well, one measure is the stories people can tell about you when they don't have to bother to know you. William Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice sometime between 1596 and 1599. Jews had been eliminated from English society by then for 300 years. How does Shylock become Shylock? His one lovely "if you prick us, do we not bleed" speech notwithstanding, how does the human become the caricature, become the stereotype, become the inhuman? It starts with the lie. Eila Devarim, these are the words. Tisha B'Av is about storytelling, and it's also about truth-telling, and the catharsis that comes with remembrance. The paradox is that Tisha B'Av includes events like the expulsion of the Jews that actually happened on Tisha B'Av, but also events that did not actually happen on Tisha B'Av. But they did happen. At least the ones in the historical period, they did. When can you fudge the truth? To make a point of consolidating trauma, the pain of memory, into one day, so that it doesn't overwhelm a people who have endured too much suffering, because for us, unfortunately, every day could be Tisha B'Av. When shouldn't you lie? When it means masking that suffering, explaining it away by justifying it somehow, or pretending that because something happened a really, really long time ago, it no longer matters. It does matter. So each year we sit on the floor, as we will tonight. We sing our sad tale of destruction and displacement. And then the next day, we stand up and hopefully, joyfully, go on with our lives. Shabbat Shalom, and may we have a meaningful and truthful Tisha B'Av this year.